Hi, welcome back to the channel. This week we're continuing on with the Track from Scratch series, and this time it's percussion. However, before we do that, I just want to touch on the EQ of the bass that I mentioned last week. As I said then, the video was already quite long, so there wasn't enough time to discuss the EQ. And again, this week is going to be quite long as well, so I'll just do it very quickly. So what I've done is basically just put a steep low cut just below the fundamental, and then a dip around the 300 mark here, and then a little dip around 1700. So let's play this back and I will bypass the EQ so you can listen to it. So that's with, and then without. It's a lot more in your face and occupies quite a lot of range in that area that the leads and the atmosphere will sit in. So we need to make room for that. Plus there's a lot of boxiness in those frequencies we want to get rid of. So now I've covered off that, let's start with the percussion. The first thing I want to do is add a MIDI track. Let's call this one Closed Hat. And then we're going to group this one. Put that over here before the pre-master. Rename this one Percussion, because this is going to be our percussion bus. Let's now add a simpler to that. So let's go to Instruments, Simpler. And now that we've done that, we can see our audio pops up here. So we see the audio from Closed Hat is going to percussion, which is good. But then it also needs to go to pre-master. Let's put in our MIDI, temporary MIDI for the Closed Hat. We're just going to do straight 16ths, very, very boring for now. And then if we go to our samples, let's type in closed, because we're looking for a closed hi-hat. That one sounds good. Closed hat silver. Let's drag him into the simpler device. Let's just zoom in also just to the start of the sample. And once we've done that, you can see that the start of the sample has quite a long gap there. So just make sure you drag the start over like that. So then the timing is unaffected. Let's put on a EQ. So audio effects, EQ, EQ 8. Put a low cut. So now that we've done that, let's begin our closed hat pattern. Let's drag the velocity up here. Now you'll notice that I have a hat on the 3rd, the 7th, the 11th, and the 15th note. Now they won't stay there. They will be removed once I do the open hat. And the reason for that is you just don't need two hats playing at the same time. It muddies the frequency spectrum, and there's really, as I said, there's literally no point. If you've got an open hat there, then you're already covering that frequency range. However, I like to leave it on just while I work the pattern out. And given they will be occupied, as I said, by the open hat, they're going to be the loudest hat in the sequence. So let's experiment with bringing down some of the velocities, just to give a bit of groove. Okay, so that's sounding quite good. One thing I would point out is that it's quite common basically just to do the 4 and then repeat that 4 times. You can do that, but I would recommend against it because you want just the subtle variations from one to the next, just to give it a bit of movement. Next, we're just going to duplicate this channel, closed hat. Let's duplicate. Let's call this one open hat, which you may have guessed. And on this one, we can delete the ones except for the 3rd, 7th, 11th, and 15th. Let's just put the open hat first, just because it seems better organized to me. Go back to the closed, and then we're going to delete these ones. And that should sound exactly the same because the same hat is on the open hat because we duplicated it. But let's now find another one. Let's go to samples. And I know from the first one that we had to do a bit of timing, so let's just check the same here. Yeah, indeed. So let's drag this one across, like so. Bit more. Maybe work on the attack and sustain after close, just to close that a bit. So that's going to be our main hat, really, or a main pattern. But we also want something that's a bit more, let's say, of an intro or a breakdown kind of thing. So let's duplicate that. Let's keep the second one as the main one. And then we're going to edit the first one. So delete the open hat because we probably don't want that playing at the same time. When this hat is playing though, we want to have a delay on that. So let's just duplicate this delay and put that on the closed hat. Let's put it there. Now there is quite a big problem with doing that, and that is because when we play the main hat back, we're going to have that delayed, and you can see it's quite a mess, as you can hear. So the first obvious thing to do is turn the dry wet down. But it's still a mess, it's too busy. So if we go into the clip here, and then we go down to envelopes, and then we choose device on. So this is our breakdown hat or our intro hat. Make sure that this device on is set or activated. And then the main hat, let's do the same, but make sure that the device is off. So let's go back here. Let's look at the delay now. Let's play back the first one. We can see that it's activated. Play back the second or the main hat, and you can see that it's gone. I think just one bar of that is quite repetitive and boring. Let's duplicate that to 4. Let's hear all 4 bars now. let's just add a utility here at the end of the chain. Actually, let's put it next to the delay and let's group these two. So we're going to group both of those. And then instead of the clip here, let's go back and we're going to change the envelopes. So here we had the device on. Let's actually delete that. And instead, let's make it more flexible. Let's turn the entire rack on like so. Then on the second one, delay device on, let's delete. And then again, the rack device on, already marked, good. And the reason simply for doing that is because we're going to adjust the output here. Maybe it's a bit premature, I think we're going to do that in the mixing stage anyway, but just to get a bit of understanding of how it sounds. So now we have a bit more parity between the two. So let's now duplicate the open hat. And the only reason for doing that is because then I keep all the routing and the buses, etc. And we're going to put a snare on 5 and 9. Let's just make sure these are longer though, so 1/8 notes, because we're going to play around with the envelope to get the length. Let's turn the EQ down, but we're going to adjust that once we decide on our snare. Go to samples, and we type in snare. I think I want a 9/9 type snare. And now with everything. Just take out a little bit of that low. And now we adjust the envelopes to taste. Let's add a bit of reverb to that one. Let's go to our audio effects. Reverb. Do we have a dark, small room? That sounds appropriate. Let's put it before the EQ just to make sure that we have no unwanted lows coming through. So now that that's working, let's add a bit more variation to those closed hats. So to do that, let's go to our audio effects, utilities, I think, and then it's under the audio effect rack, which I already have open. And then we're going to use my little glitch rack called Adrenaglitch. Let's drag him across. Let's put it before the EQ. And essentially this is just this series of beat repeats that glitch, basically, with little macro knobs here. The main one is basically just to adjust the glitch density. So let's play back just the hats and I'll adjust the density. So obviously that's way too much. We just want just a fraction. There you go. Just occasionally it comes in. But then because we don't want it on the intro hats, we need to do the same thing that we did earlier. So device on, let's make sure that that's off. And then for variation 1, training glitch device on, already selected, let's make sure that's on. Alright, now let's move on to a bit of variation in the percussion. So to do that, let's add, well, again, let's duplicate. Let's just call this snare layer for want of a better term. It won't play in the intro, so get rid of that. We can get rid of the sample initially. We can get rid of the reverb, we don't want that. Let's keep the EQ. Again, the main reason why I duplicated it was just to keep the routing to percussion, and also the color scheme, if I'm honest. And here we're going to add a drum rack. And then let's put in a series of 16ths, just straight 16ths. So now I've loaded in 8 samples there. If we go to a MIDI, you can see that they're all labeled appropriately. Let's just move our MIDI down to the first one. So this rim one, let's play this back. And obviously it's just playing this rim back straight and consistently. Now this is where the fun comes in. So go to our MIDI effects, let's drag random in. Let's put that before the drum rack. Now what this does, it will play one of these notes randomly every time a note is hit. So the choices is the number of samples up from the root note. So currently, if we play this back, you can see it's playing a C2, I think that is. And if we turn the chance up, it is now playing 12 notes above, randomly selecting 12 notes above. However, one peculiarity with this is that it doesn't play the first root note. It starts from the one above. So you can see there's nothing ever playing on C1. So what I'd like to do, maybe there's a better way to do this, but if we go down to here on B0, I'm just going to drag in a sample, anyone, completely at random. Now we have another layer down here. So let's drag our MIDI down one, and now we can just delete this. But we still have our MIDI in there as the bass. Now if we play this back, you can see it starts from C1 now, and it's playing all the samples. Now you'll notice that the choices at the moment is 12. If I turn this down to 8, it will only play 8 of these. So obviously 1 every hit. But that's obviously too much. So the neatest way I've found to give a bit of, let's say, density to it is if you turn this up more than the maximum samples. So if we turn this to 16, for example, this will now play 50% of the time because there's only 50% of the slots have samples in there. You can obviously do that also in the probability here. If you select here, you can do the chance and you can change the probability there. But I like to do it here because then I can add a macro knob to it. So let's now group these. And let's add a macro knob. Let's add the choice here to map. And then what I'm also going to do is reverse this. So 24 here and 1 here. So what that means is just makes more sense logically, even though the number doesn't. But when you're down, the chance is very, very low. And when you turn it up, the chance is 100%. Let's also go to our MIDI effects and choose velocity. Let's do total random in here also. That will just get a bit of velocity randomization. Next, if we go to LFO modulator, let's drag a LFO down. Let's put that still within the rack. Now let's take the LFO and let's map to our transpose. Let's do the same for all the samples. Map, transpose. So now we have a LFO currently on sine, impacting the pitch of these samples. So I'll play it back, it might be a bit of a mess. So instead of having a sine, let's put it on random. Let's turn it to the rate to 1/16. So now you can see that that's very quickly getting out of hand in terms of levels. So let's put a compressor on it. And then also let's put a limiter just to be safe. And if we go back to our MIDI, we currently have a note playing on the 5th and the 13th. We don't want that because that's where the snare will play, so it gets rid of that. So we don't want any overlap. Let's go to audio effects. That's maybe one of the pitch and modulations in the shifter category. We can also experiment with the glitch in there as well, which is under utilities, Adreno glitch. Let's put that in before the compressor. Actually, let's do it before the EQ also, just to be safe. Let's add another LFO. And here we're going to assign this to the pan. Same as before, 1/16. Depth, maybe turn that down, we don't want it full side to side. Let's swap out this delay. Let's go with audio effects. Let's go with echo. I quite like the sound of echo. Let's ping pong straight away. Mix all the way up. think that's it for the percussion episode. Maybe there'll be some more changes as the track goes along, but that is the basis. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.